just making this a small video based on a series that I'm rewatching, and with Rwby about a week away. Well, two for me. I'm not paying shit to Rooster Teeth anymore. I used to. I'm not doing that shit anymore for this company. And just to establish why I'm not giving any money to Rooster Teeth, there's really no point in giving money to Rooster Teeth anymore. There's no point in being a first member and being like, oh, if you got it in your mindset out that your money is going to the animators, to the creators. The fact is, Rooster Teeth is owned by a bigger corporation now. There was AT&T and that. If they want funding, they just have to go to the fucking corporation. Just ask the corporation. Corporation throws them a couple million. Hey, make an animated series for us. All their bills are getting paid for by the corporation. Their subscription is only so they don't shut down Rooster Teeth. And in all honesty, with 2019, how they're working the subscription services and what they're promising, like, just on a small note, it would probably be a very small minority of the Rooster Teeth fandom that are buying First Plus at this point, or even for like First, there's probably a good third of the fandom doing that, but First Plus, they'll only they can't be many. That's expensive as shit, and most people will only watch Rooster Teeth for certain shows. They're not going in there and watching every single product that they dish out because what you're gonna find is stuff's very repetitive with Rooster Teeth. It's like if you watch Achievement Hunter, which I do enjoy on and off, if you watch that for a year solid, you don't want to watch it for the second year because you're just watching people game. You're just watching people game and give their opinions on the games. In which case, you can just watch any podcast or review on the internet. Does the same thing. You can go on YouTube, go watch some friggin' person live streaming a game. It's the same shit, except they do it for a corporation now. So, but on that note, this has more to do with Rwby, and that's just me venting some shit about why you shouldn't pay. Honestly, just wait the extra week. You watch fucking Rwby for free. I can't be bothered giving money to that company anymore. I pay Crunchyroll. I got an AEW subscription for wrestling. I got other subscriptions. I got my mobile. I got rent. Subscriptions add up. For everyone out there, before I go into this topic, do yourself a favor. At the end of a month, look at how many subscription services you're a part of and total up how much you're paying monthly for all these subscription services. For me, as I said, it's like AEW I got like Crunchyroll, I got Spotify. I can't live without Spotify because I love music. Whenever I leave the house, earphones in straight away. I got different subscriptions. Then you got as I said, you got your mobile, your internet, everything. Total up all that, and then just realize that Rooster Teeth is asking anywhere between fucking $6 US for the rest of the world. For Australia already, that's something like $7.50. At minimum per month, all the way up to the glorious $130 on First Plus, which $130 would probably end up being around 160, 170 Australian. No, it's not gonna work. Fucking hell, the rest of the world doesn't catch up with US currency. Anyway, with Rwby around the corner, I said if people were like ask me, because I critique the show a lot, that certain people have asked me, it's like, what got you interested in the show? And this is something that's common throughout a lot of anime I watch. Is one, I do like villains just naturally. I've said that before, but two, I like oppression storylines. So the thing that always grabbed me with Rwby, it wasn't the fact that everything could turn into a gun, because if you look at half the weapons in the show, they don't turn into fucking guns. Go into your law book, look at Team Bronze, look at all of them. Most people don't even have transforming weapons anymore. Rooster Teeth can't be bothered keeping with the consistency. One person just has like little saw blades on his arms. They're not transforming saw blades, they're just saw blades. Fuck. But what came down to it with the oppression thing is the Faunus storyline, which is probably why I'm so disappointed by Rwby in general, because the Faunus discrimination plot is perhaps the weakest aspect of Rwby. It's like, if they want to... Some shows, we've seen some shows that are brilliantly written handle multiple aspects. They'll have an overarching story with subplots, and the subplot would be a discrimination thing. You see it in Full Metal Alchemist with the, oh god, I'm trying to remember his name, Scar's people. Like, Ishvalans, they're oppressed. You got all different shows that have oppression in them. And you can handle it well or you handle it shit. And Rwby's just handling it friggin' shit. With Sienna for violence is dead. Adam for violence is dead. The White Fang is... and all the Faunus are left behind in friggin' Mistral or wherever the fuck they've gone. And Blake and Weiss. Blake and Weiss basically come down to it. They're the only two characters that can evolve around the Faunus discrimination, and we're going to the most racist country in Remnant. So, what it is I'm going to show you, I'm not bullshitting you, and you can judge me whether you want to or not. I'm not a big fan of the movies, hence the reason I can't even remember them, so I'm rewatching them. That's on Netflix. I'm up to the Hunger Games Catching Fire. I watched the first one and actually surprised me that I was interested into it. And Catching Fire is even better than the first one. Especially with how the politics and oppression is shown. Because the one instance someone asked me was like, how would you show oppression in Rwby? And I went through and I did a video on it where I said, Faunus slavery is impossible. That's one of my previous videos. And I go into detail about why slavery is impossible in Atlas. From just, like, what type of slavery I was talking about then is outright slavery. We're talking cages, we're talking the people being branded. We're saying, which Ilya, as far as we know, doesn't have a brand, so it's really a one-off with Adam, and it's something that we never see how he got it, so it's ridiculous. It's a lot of dumb shit. So I was just like watching Catching Fire, and I realized it's an average movie. It has good moments, it has bad moments, but what it does good is the oppression aspect of the Hunger Games, with President Snow as the antagonistic villain, and it shows you, thanks to the districts, how oppression works in a different way. It's like slavery, but it's out in the open, so it's not viewed as slavery, but it's seen more as an oppression. And I did write down a few points because I started to realize, if you take these aspects that are in the Hunger Games, how they use oppression out in the open, so people are aware of it, they're just living that life. It's like, and it's too late to change, obviously, Rwby now. The show's coming out in a week, the plot's already friggin' done. So whatever Miles, Kerry, and the two new writers have decided to do with the Faunus discrimination in Atlas, which it has to be shown. It's like, if Atlas avoids this issue altogether, the show might as well just fucking end. Just end. But obviously, if they're going ahead with it, I was just like, these are aspects. One, with the districts, obviously you can't do that in Rwby. Well, you could, if you considered showing how the Faunus get treated in the 4 different countries differently. And that dates back to the war 80 years ago, where Vacchio and Vale were against slavery, but Mistral and Atlas wasn't. And that's something I think they failed in Mistral, because all we got was one paper sign on the friggin' door. It was like really dumb how Faunus oppression was handled in Mistral. That's why they need to hit at home with Atlas. And Vale, they didn't give a shit. But then if you look at how Ospen runs things. He's a bit of a dickhead. But in terms of Atlas, because it's divided in two between the Elysians and Mantle, and I'm trying to do this fast because I only got so many memory on my phone. Mantle. There has to be laws in Mantle that are not present in Solaris. I believe the floating city is not called Atlas; it's called Solaris. So the laws need to be different between the rich and the poor. This represents also in the Hunger Games with the capital and the outer lining districts, such as District 12. They're completely friggin' different from the poor to the rich. And with stuff that you start to see in Catching Fire when the military gets involved, and in which case Solaris and Atlas are military based and under martial law right now with the blockade in place, you see public whippings, executions, they shut down the black markets in the show, and the reason behind that is the people can no longer supply themselves with resources or share resources. They become dependent on the rich, and it's the rich trying to nail the attitude that you got to be thankful for us because we're supplying you what you need to live. It's a very smart aspect to shut down the black markets and make the poor dependent on the rich for resources. That's a form of oppression, and a very smart one. It also helps when you damage people's homes and everything, if you can just blindly accuse them of doing something wrong and just trashing their friggin' house. It leads to revolution, which results in the whipping and the executions. One important thing, and I don't think they're going to do it, and I thought this would have been freaking brilliant with the Faunus in Mantle, and the only reason I think they're not going to do this is in the trailer, we already see a nighttime setting in Mantle, and people are out in the open, and the thing I should have established before, is curfew. There should be in Mantle a curfew law for the Faunus, but not for the humans. And if it's broken, this leads to whippings, executions, or whatever. It's just different laws to apply to the Faunus to the humans. And as I said, the Hunger Games, I think Catching Fire is on the way of being rated as a good movie. It's probably got the highest rating out of all 4 of the Hunger Game movies, because it's the transitional movie that shows the change, and it shows the change really well. And I don't praise movies like this because I don't like the books in general of the Hunger Games. I read a lot of books, but yeah, the Hunger Games are not rated up there with my favorite books, but they did this right. They did the oppression and open slavery, as I said. They did this really well, and all of the things I pointed out, just going over again: curfew, dependent on the higher-ups for resources, shutting down black markets, whipping all the way up to executions, and different laws that apply to 2 different sets of species in this case. This is all stuff that could be out in the open and could just be centered around politics and government rather than calling it slavery. It can be interpreted as slavery, but it's just how the countries run. And in that essence, Ospen wouldn't really have much power over it. And the downside to it, regardless, because this is what's going to happen regardless, is that if we're going to make the Faunus look like they're actually oppressed, and I hate saying this because I don't want this to happen, but it's it has to happen, is all the people we know from Atlas, whether you can say it's Penny, when you can say it's Ironwood, whether you can say it's Winter, even Weiss, when it comes down to it, all these people are going to look like bad guys. Weiss might be fighting back for it at this point, but she lived her whole life with the realization of how this system would have worked. And she was okay with it up till she came to Vale. And it's Winter will come across as a bad person. She's in the military, she supports it, and the country's run in an oppression state towards these people. You're gonna have main characters like Ironwood, Winter, and all that. They're gonna have to be judged on the same level that Jacques Schnee would be judged on, because they're all people that have turned a blind eye to how the Faunus have been put down. And this is how I'm gonna end this. If they don't do this and make the characters look like assholes, then the Faunus aren't really oppressed. If you don't take the steps to actually show that they're being oppressed to the point that it warrants the creation of the White Fang, then you got to ask yourself, if we leave Atlas and the setting of Atlas doesn't make you feel sorry to the point that the White Fang deserve to exist, then the show fails. If we leave Atlas feeling like, oh, the humans and the Faunus, they both had it bad in Mantle, then it's just like the White Fang should not have existed. Who were they fighting for in the end? Which Faunus were they fighting for? And this is the last video I'm doing going into Volume 7, and because if they don't nail this in Atlas, I'm being dead honest at this point. I've said I'm only watching Rwby up to the Atlas arc. I'm curious what's happening in Atlas, and if they don't nail it, I don't see the point in really watching this show anymore. You can watch it for the overall point. I don't give a shit about Cinder. I don't give a shit about the bad guys. The bad guys' story is just fucking retarded. I don't give a shit about Oscar and Osborn anymore. I really fucking don't. If you can't nail the most basic aspect of your world building that you've built up for 6 years, if you fail at that, at the most key point in the story for you to display it, why are you watching, fans? That's my overall question to you. Why are you watching? What's going to be your excuse at that point? I'm saying if, I'm not saying when, I'm saying if they fail at the Faunus plot in Atlas, the one chance they have to make this right, if they fail, why are you watching, and why do you still have hope in this show? Because it's clear at that point, if they don't pull it off, they're not going to have... I'm being dead honest. These people won't be hired outside of Rooster Teeth by any other company. Because it's at that point, if they fail at that level, they shouldn't have their careers in general. You tell me if I'm wrong.